I'm Attorney Todd Leneve. Welcome to West Virginia Gun Law. Today I want to take a few minutes and revisit our discussion of Senate Bill 3589 that we talked about just a couple of weeks ago and how it relates to church security teams. Stick around. Viewers who took time to watch the video I dropped a couple of weeks ago regarding Senate Bill 3589 will remember that this was a solely partisan bill introduced by Democrat Senator Edward Markey of Massachusetts. This bill was aimed at preventing private paramilitary activities, and we talked in that previous video about what that exactly means and what kind of groups might be affected. But one thing we didn't touch on was the importance of this legislation to church security teams. In that bill, we showed how it defines private training activities of groups that are organized, that have some sort of hierarchy structure to them, as private paramilitary organizations. Now, while that bill is an absolute stretch, the simple fact is that it does in fact come after any organization or organized group that gets together for a common purpose of training for self-defense scenarios. Well, we didn't address it in that first video, but when we take a look at the shooting that happened at Joel Osteen's church down in Texas just about a week and a half ago, we realize that church security groups are exactly the kind of organization or organized group that could fall under the coverage of this bill if it were to pass. And in that instance down in Texas, a shooter came into the church during a regular service on a Sunday and was very quickly shot dead by a couple of members of the church's security team. Now, that security team, like the security team of our local churches, many of them small churches, but nonetheless with organized groups of men who agree to participate and provide security for the congregation during worship services, that group trains. These groups in our local churches train. They get together, they have meetings, they organize, they typically have a leader who runs the whole organization. And so by all the definitions, the activities that they engage in, the way they organize, those church security teams would fall under the coverage of this bill. It's an important thing to understand because we look at a church security team as just a totally benevolent group of people who want to get together and ensure that the church members have a safe place to worship when they get together for their regular scheduled services. They're not there looking for trouble. They aren't there trying to assert authority. In most cases, people don't even know who the members of the church security team are because they prefer to keep the focus on worship, not on the guy standing in the back with an MP5 and battle dress uniform fatigues. That's not who these folks are. These are regular members of the church who have taken the time and dedicated themselves to protecting their fellow members of the church by being prepared for a threat that might present itself, with the idea being the entire time that dealing with a threat is the last thing that they want to do. But because we live in a world where we see an increased number of these kinds of actions against people of faith, against churches, it's important today more than ever that churches are prepared, even with simple measures, to protect their congregation against a threat. But under this bill introduced by Senator Markey, the idea of a church group getting together, organizing, having a hierarchy, a leader, maybe a second in command, having communications, having training, having a scheme by which they will defend the church, and if there's a violent attack, the way they will be able to use violence in response is the kind of thing that this bill is saying not going to happen here on our watch. So we talked in that previous video about the fact that I don't believe this bill has a great chance of passing. But the simple reality is that right now it doesn't have a great chance of passing because the GOP controls the House of Representatives. And while not all of them are true Republicans, true conservatives, they do generally vote together. And if that bill even was to pass out of the Senate, which again I don't believe is likely this time, it would likely not make it through the vote process in the House. It may not even make it to a vote in the House. In other words, the House may just say, oh, you can send it over, but it's going to be dead on arrival. It will not get on a committee, it will not get on an agenda, and it will not see the floor. However, we have an election coming up this year, and things could change. And if the Democrats were to regain control of both chambers of the United States Congress, a bill like this may well get introduced again with a very different audience, with a different set of legislators looking at it. And there's no point in making any bones about it. The left does not like private citizens having firearms. And we see this happening all over the country where there are efforts being made to limit or altogether prevent the right of private citizens to own firearms, possess firearms, to use firearms. So if we see a substantial change in the U.S. Congress in this upcoming election cycle, a bill like this bill may not be so far-fetched. That's why it's critical that we make our voices heard by those who we've elected to represent us, that we let them know that we don't support this kind of legislation, that we want to be safe, and that we want the Second Amendment to be left alone, because very simply as it says, it shall not be infringed. If they are taking these kinds of actions to limit our ability to possess and use firearms, they are in fact infringing on our Second Amendment rights. Don't let them do it. Don't just sit back and let legislation like this go through the process without your representatives hearing your voice and knowing where you stand on the issue. If you have any questions on this topic, please feel free to get in touch with us. Our contact information is available through the websites linked in the description below, and I'll be happy to speak with you more in detail about this question and what issues may come up in your mind. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the like button on this video. Share this so that the folks that you know who would be interested in this content have a chance to see it. And I appreciate you taking a few minutes to stop by and spend with me again here today. Until the next video, take care and be safe.